Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NerdLabs podcast. We're here with Sahar and Ian from Choice DAO, and we're going to talk about this exciting new thing that they're working on. Um, Exciting because it's actually really exciting, but it's sort of sad that we have to do this in this situation. But I think it's a very powerful tool that you guys are working on. So let's dive in and explore what Choice DAO is and what it means for the space in general. So welcome. Good morning. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you. Good morning.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. Like how did you get into this space in the first place?
That's a really good question. I'm happy to go, and then Ian, I'd love to hear your story as well.
Sure.
Uh, so my name's Sahar. I Nonprofit work has sort of been in my DNA my entire life. My mom worked at a nonprofit that was, working on education, and I grew up in that office around those activists. And then when I was around 12, I joined a friend's family foundation. And at that point in philanthropy, family foundations were looking at the next generation as like the 30-plus-year-old white dudes that were going to come and run the foundations when they were ready to take it over.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a lot of the youth around them saying, "Hey, we want to help too. We have all these really cool ideas around how we can, support the local community." And so my friends and I built a template for enabling the youth and empowering them as part of like a youth board for family foundations, and that
Mm-hmm.
spread across the US, and a lot of other family foundations employed that same model of like encouraging the youth to join the conversations
Mm-hmm.
and giving them space to create grant proposals and creating space for them to go out and do volunteer work in a really awesome way.
Uh-huh.
And then I thought I was going to do a PhD in economic policy because I was really interested in how developing countries become more progressive and more modern.
Mm-hmm.
But then I jumped into tech because that to me was the fastest path to impact at
Right.
scale, working on technology. And so I worked on software for a long time. And then when I was taking some time off, I started exploring, Web3. What does the future of community look like?
Mm-hmm.
And the current structure right now is for that is a DAO.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the Roe v. Wade stuff started happening, I went fully into it, and,
Right.
and
Like
yeah,
you jumped right into it.
totally. And here we are creating Choice DAO together.
That's so cool. And tell me a little bit about your experience with philanthropy in general, because my general experience with like legacy systems is that there's a lot of goodwill, but then you try to participate in those systems and you see that there's some like glaring problems that you just can't get over, right? And Web3 stands against that a lot, but what are some of the things that you saw that really hindered the whole process before you went into crypto?
That's a good question. Um, I'll say two things on that topic. One is that it's amazing to come and empower amateurs to get involved in old systems, right? Because amateurs come with no baggage, no kind of understanding of the system, so they can really disrupt things and come in with like fresh eyes. That being said, I think that the systems exist for reasons, and there's learnings and wisdom from the old vets that we can take and apply in our charge forward. And so I think that like yes, there was a lot of kind of systemic inefficiency and ways that I think that we can improve, but doing that in combination in collaboration with the people that have been doing it for years, and not just saying like, hey, we're going to come, mess everything up. And that's not like a good working
Right,
relationship either.
right.
It
Yeah,
wasn't the
and
no. So it's like bringing our fresh ideas to the table and saying like, hey, these are really like cool, we're going to do these. What have you learned that can help make sure that we do these right and
right.
effectively?
Yeah, I think that's a really important concept because like a lot of people think about disruption, about like break everything apart, right? But
Mm.
then we're also like in crypto you do iterative design. You have to take what happened before, look how it broke and improve. It's not about just redoing it because there's a lot of good things happening, right? But yeah, I think that's really cool. And Ian, tell us about your story a little bit. How did you come into the space?
Yeah, so all the way back in 2016, I was just simply an ESL teacher teaching people English in the Czech Republic. And I went to a provincial library. I discovered the book Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper about Bitcoin and everything that was happening then.
That
The
is
classic.
that is a coincidence, I think. I mean,
It was.
what are the odds,
I
right?
wasn't looking for it. Exactly. I wasn't looking for it, but I discovered that. I got obsessed with Bitcoin for about a year. I jumped into Ethereum after that. And, basically the rest is history. I've worked for all sorts of crypto companies, started writing one article at a time. And really, what I'm passionate about and have been since 2019 or so is the burgeoning and growing Web3 movement and how it puts ownership back into the hands of the people. And that includes DAOs and other structures where we have this real collective ownership and this build culture from day one where, there doesn't have to be a whole lot of rules and people can just come in and give where they can best give.
Right. And so so you were teaching English, so you're not really like a technical person, right?
I wasn't at the time, but I will say I have become one by default by being in the space for so long now.
Right, yeah, that's what happens to a lot of us. Like I was a physician and now I'm coding stuff. Like it's crazy, but it's fun to like because there's a lot of self-actualization going on, right? Okay,
Exactly.
and your role, what's your role on Choice Out?
Yeah, so I help out with PR, comms, content, copy, all that stuff, and I help out bringing people in. From day one, I got a text from Alona, my dear friend in Ukraine DAO, and she pulled me into this. And I brought my friend Luke to the first meeting, and we just started bringing as many good people in as we could because
That
we believe in the cause.
that's awesome. I mean, that's mainly what I'm interested on in the podcast about how like these communities grow and form. So I think it's super interesting to hear more about like Constitution DAO as a movement, right? Um, so Zahar, like, what's the can you we've all been talking about Constitution about as if everyone knew what it is, but could you explain like the viewers what Constitution DAO is?
Yeah, Constitution DAO is a project
I mean,
that
sorry, Choice DAO, not Constitution DAO.
we can talk about Constitution DAO too. We have
Yeah.
some of their core members on the Choice DAO team. Yeah, Choice DAO was a response to the overturn of Roe v. Wade by the U.S. Supreme Court. Uh, and we've been talking about what can we do to support reproductive health in the U.S. for months. There was a leaked the decision was leaked actually a few months
Hmm.
ago. So someone from the inside leaked it, and everyone's like, "Hey, they're going to take this action. FYI, get angry." And our first step was actually not to just jump to action, but to talk to the people in the space working on reproductive access. So there
Hmm.
are a couple of us were like, okay, let's go talk to these organizations that have been doing this for many years and see, hey, we think that this type of project in Web3 would be really amazing. Would that be welcome? And they said yes. And so kind of we had a couple of months to think about what we wanted to do. And we thought that the DAO would be an amazing structure for this project because of the way that you can leverage both community and capital here. It's not just about raising money.
Right.
And so, kind of like Ian said, once the decision was leaked on Friday, that was the 24th, we were able to jump into action. And the team, it was so beautiful to see everyone come together. We had a group of 3 people just talking about it for a couple months. The decision landed. That group of 3 turned into a core members group of 30 overnight, literally overnight. And we had our friend's office overflowing with people that were in town for NFT NYC because they were so angry and they didn't know what to do. And they were like, I'm showing up for Choice now. How can I help? It was like Ian came, Luke came. It was the energy was so cool. And then from there, our Discord community has been blowing up. Same with our Twitter following, and it's really striking a chord in a moment where I think it's a time where people can be involved. They can tweet, they can donate, they can volunteer. But there's like far too many other people who feel really upset
Hmm.
and are unsure what they can do about it. And so I think when you're in that place and you feel helpless, and the world becomes more depressing,
Yeah.
and you feel left out of the process of building towards that better future. And so I think Choice DAO is that, like, we're bringing nonprofit people and Web3 people in a way that's bottoms up. It's real
Hmm.
grassroots,
Right.
and a combination of community and money that is going to support and complement the existing initiatives in reproductive health.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that what you said about leveraging both capital and community is super important because, sorry, my bad. What I think is that what I've seen is that actually in this space, community is more valuable than capital. And that's like a super important thing because in the real world, capital wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like capital always wins. It doesn't matter if you have a movement, it doesn't matter if you do whatever, capital wins. But in crypto, it doesn't matter if you have capital, but if no one wants to participate in your thing, you're done. And if you it's a trust-based relationship, right? And you just can't force that with money. So, and it's a very important takeaway of empowering people to do something about stuff, right? And that can be a lot of things, but what you experience with people showing up and saying I'm angry and I don't know what to do, that's what a lot of people are experiencing. And if we have this collective, which like it actually represents your belief on the issue, like you can actually do something about it, even if it's just talking about it to someone else, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that focusing on peer capital discounts the community in this model. And for what it worth, we like encourage people to donate directly to organizations that are already working on this. That's the fastest way and the easiest way if you just want to contribute money. But that question around, we're more than just a fundraising vehicle is important, as that is the goal of the DAO. And so I think, yeah, you're right. In many ways, the community can be more powerful than money. And I'll also say it's a US law that's changing, but this is a geo-agnostic
Mm-hmm.
problem. We have people all around the world, like Ian said, we have people in Ukraine, in the UK, and South America. It gives people the ability everywhere around the world to stand up and say, hey, I'm raising my hand. I want to help. I want to have an impact on this at a time where I otherwise feel totally left out of it.
Right. And at the end of the day, like a lot of the situation that the rest of the world has been going through for the past like 20 or so years is that we have to like watch this strive in the United States. And the thing is that those decisions matter in the rest of the world because like legislation changes based on precedents, and if the United States does something, then everyone else has this like guide to go through. And if the United States is being regressive with reproductive rights, guess what the rest of the world is gonna do, right?
Yeah, they're good for you.
So, so it's like our fight, like it's everyone's fight. And the thing is that there aren't any good institutions that are really transnational at the human level.
Mhm.
Like we've tried the like United Nations and whatever, but that's a group of elected officials who like don't really represent anyone. So the thing doesn't represent people. But what if the future is like a constellation of choice DAOs and constitution DAOs and Ukraine DAOs, and they do a United Nations? Now that would be way more human than what we have, right?
That would
DAO
be
of DAOs, DAO of DAOs, sorry, Sahar,
go for
will
it.
happen. These spider webs of DAOs, these collectives of DAOs will happen. And I truly believe that's one of the reasons I got involved with this, that the next paradigm for DAOs, moving beyond this fundraising model, this pure fundraising model, is being powerful vehicles for social impact. And I thought this was the most powerful vehicle possible from the get go. So I wanted to see it through. And, we're all in this for the long haul.
Yeah. And so another question. Let's let's think about the future of choice DAO, right? So right now you're sort of like getting yourself known in the space. Uh, let's assume you launch the fundraiser and it's super successful and you reach your goal and then some. What are you doing next?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And then to add on to what Ian was saying, I think that is part of the long term vision. It would be amazing for projects to spin out of ChoiceDAO. We've already had different developer groups kind of wanting to build things for ChoiceDAO on different chains across different platforms. We've had people self-organizing, thinking about doing hackathons. And so these like more micro projects in the context of ChoiceDAO kind of hint at what could be possible if it were to, scale. And so, yes, for the first mission, our goal is to raise over $1 million in 26 days. The 26 days is symbolic of the 26 states in the United States that are likely to ban abortion access to the fullest extent. And then beyond mission one, it's going to be community driven. I think that's a question for the community is how do we want to operationalize this? What is the next mission we want to take on? How does everyone want to switch up their roles or kind of add more, add less, or take off some? And so I think that we have really good alignment on mission one, but we leave it up to the community to see how they want to take Choice Out forwards. And I think in a few years, looking back, it would be a dream for Choice DAO. And also, I would say that the core members have amazing projects that are also doing work like this, like Ukraine DAO.
Mm,
To have all of these different DAO structures and templates and models be the example for future movements. Like if any movement should be able to tap into Web3, and I think that's like the long term goal is to show them how they can do that. So Black Lives Matter should know how to spin up a DAO. Like
right.
any issue or initiative that you want to work on should be able to leverage the power of this digitally distributed community.
Yeah, and like I had I really totally 100% agree with you, and I had this moment like remember back when the women's marches happened back like was it 2018?
Mm-hmm.
Um I was really moved by that, like by the power of like everyone just going out and agreeing and stuff, but I felt disheartened because it didn't translate into anything meaningful, right? Like it didn't. I mean, it did like represent the movement and the Me Too movement and everything, but it didn't have any tangible thing like that happened afterwards, right? And I just imagine if like Women's Thou would have happened back then, and everyone would have been able to like participate in this like sort of structure, what sort of thing could have happened from that? um, like
Mm-hmm.
the massive change that was ready to happen, but there was no way to capitalize in that. Um, I
Right, or even like empowering them with capital.
right, right,
All
and yeah,
millions of women.
yeah, and funding the marches and giving them transport and protecting them and everything they need, and then move into a phase of okay, we agree that there's something that needs to be done. What do we need to do instead of like turning into this witch hunt in a sense that I mean it was needed, but at the end of the day it breaks down like the social contract, right? It turns into a you versus me, uh, and it's a fight, and that's not what you want to get out of a movement. You want people to join in together and like do what we're doing here. Like, hey, let's participate. Let's join our efforts and create something better, right?
Yeah, the Women's March was the largest single day protest in US history. It was transformative in its own response. And I don't know the specifics of the march and kind of what happened after. What I will say is my own personal experience is like, yes, marching is really important. We need to show up. We need to like make our voices heard. I still feel helpless when I march because I don't feel like they're listening to me.
Right.
They're seeing me, we're in the news, they see our signs, they see we're upset, but the people that are supposed to take care of us are elected officials. It doesn't feel like they really, really hear
Right.
us. And so, yeah, I think that's why I'm really excited about the potential for DAOs and kind of this thinking of what is fundraising 3.0 for initiatives. I definitely think that Web3 community is the model for them. And so I'm really, really excited about the potential of this.
Nice. So, what's some of the struggles that you've had so far, like into getting up to this moment in ChoiceDAO? Sorry.
Yeah, Ian, you feel free to jump in too. I feel like the It's been fairly thoughtful, and the people involved are really intentional and well mannered and just really excited and passionate. And so there's been like no internal issues. I think the main hurdles you think about when starting a DAO are like, okay, what legal requirements do we have?
Hmm.
What structure do we want this DAO to look like? How do we want this DAO to look like? And then what is a governance framework that we want to pass, and what does voting look like, and how do proposals work? What organizations are we going to get engaged with? So all of those are questions that we've been working with the community to answer. We'll be ready to launch fundraising. So we're not able to accept contributions yet for legal
Hmm.
reasons, but in about a week, we'll be ready to go. And so, what are all the things we need to do up until that point to make sure that we are able to fundraise in a really amazing, big way? And then I think that there's some like thinking around, how do we mitigate attack vectors? Because it is a touchy topic, it's
Right.
sensitive, we'll have
Safety is
lots
important.
questions. Yeah, how do we ensure the safety of our community members, our core members, and our partners? So those have been like the questions we've been asking ourselves, and I think we've been doing a really really good job of collaborating across the team and group and community. Ian, if you want to jump in, I'm curious to see what you think.
Yeah, that was wonderfully said. I was listening, but I wouldn't say that we have any struggles right now. It's more that in a positive way. I think we're on the cusp of something so big and so many things are happening at the same time that we're always welcoming more passionate people, even into the core, who can really bring something and just get started from day one. These self starters, these people who just want to jump in and get going right away.
Right. And that's one of the things that I have dealt a lot with in this like DAO mindset type of thing, where the main struggle is figuring out what to tell people, like what people should do, right? Because a lot of people like have these really good
Exactly.
intentions, but then they want to be told what to do. And I'm like, I don't
Mm,
know, like whatever you like, what I tell people is whatever you find the most fun, like do that.
yeah.
That's my advice.
Yeah, our goal is we want to create this culture that is less permission based and more feedback oriented, right? So,
Hmm.
like, bias towards extreme action, no permissions, just support where you want help. Like, reach your hand for us if you need input or resources or more people. I do think, though, that like when you jump into a Discord, it can be pretty hectic and you don't know, you're like, I'm ready to go, but you don't know exactly where to plug in. And so we've been working a lot with our community members on like, okay, we think like social is an area of opportunity here. Who wants to spin up the Instagram or Twitter?
Hmm.
And I mean, just yesterday, a community member raised her hand and has been doing an amazing job on Instagram and got us like a bunch of followers in a few hours.
That's nice.
And so I think asking that question, how can I help? And then working with them to say, these are the areas, what ideas do we have? Or we can jump in a voice chat and jam on ideas. We've been doing a lot of that.
Hmm.
We also have a help intake forum on our website, and that we also post in Discord so people can specify sort of what their superpowers are. I think that helps narrow the focus. And so if someone's really technical, we can say, okay, like, take a look at our website, take a look at our tooling. What do you think can be improved? Or if people are more marketing and PR, like Ian, like, what comms do we need? What is the messaging? What, journalists do you want to connect with? That sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, I think also like a key difference is like what's how how people work when they're not hired
Mm,
in compared where when they're like volunteering for stuff. And that's like one of the key difference that I love to see, because like just to think about how many man hours a project with a bunch of volunteers can put in of like high quality work, it's just insane in comparison to having like a bunch of interns, right?
yeah. And I mean, like, if you imagine like someone spends 2 hours a week, like that's not that much time, but 2 hours a week per Discord member. For us, we have about 400 Discord members. That's about 800 hours a week. That is
Right.
a lot of time. You can get a lot done. And so even at like, there's really no minimum requirement to participation, or and the same with contribution, but like mostly participation. There's no minimum requirement, and whatever you can do that is going to be helpful and meaningful for us because we're leveraging against everyone else's time and dollars. And so year $1 or year 1 hour gets put into this pool of everyone else's $1 or 1 hour, and we can make magic happen from there.
Right, and that's when you feel your contribution is meaningful and you feel you're part of something and you feel stimulated and you feel happy and you make friends. And like the thing is that this is so rare in 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 the real world. This just doesn't happen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And finding these things and and understanding how they work, it can be like a path forward for any number of like goal-based movements to exist and just make people happy, which is like the most important part, right? Of course,
Yeah.
we have a cause, and that's something you need as a person. You need a cause. Everyone needs a cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
what you're building is just a platform for people to like express that, and I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm blown away every day. I got a DM 2 days ago that a couple of our Discord members had become friends just because of the DAO, and they met up for drinks, and then they came back from drinks, and they had like 6 ideas on how to make the community better, and they're now working on process together.
Oh,
I
they're
mean, that is.
totally gonna date. They're dating.
I would love also for the long-term vision of Choice DAO to be help people fall in love. That would be.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. Now, so let's talk a little bit about Constitution DAO and Ukraine DAO and stuff that has happened before
Yeah.
as a path forward, right? I was a part of both Constitution DAO and Ukraine DAO. I mean, not a part. I bought their stuff because I really want to like have some of these things. Um, but which way do you think you're going to lean towards? Because Constitution did like a token drop after the fundraising, and I think that's a very cool idea. And Ukraine DAO did NFTs, which I think it's also a cool idea to like keep the
Mhm.
fundraising going and have like because at the end of the day, like incentives and people are really touchy about token incentives and stuff like this. But I think people have to understand that these are value capture mechanisms, right? And when Constitution DAO created this movement around what they did, their token represented that movement, that organizational structure, that like mind share they got. It had real value, right? And if you guys fundraise and then airdrop a token to people who paid for the fundraise, that token represents this movement and it has real value. So it's not like a perverse thing that you're doing, but actually paying people for their contribution to what happened, right? So what's
Mhm.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're gonna go with tokens, fungible tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, so to contribute, you have to have a crypto wallet, and you have to use the fundraising tool. We're going to be using Syndicate for our fundraise
Mm-hmm.
to contribute, and you'll be able to add USDC across ETH and across Polygon. Polygon because of low fees, ETH because it's the most
Right.
high volume. And so once you contribute, you'll automatically receive tokens. So we're not doing an airdrop or a claim mechanism because make that we want to empower people to vote as fast as possible, and we want to use the voting tokens to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the tokens are going to be non-transferable. The
Okay.
reason for this is because we don't want the token to have any utility other than governance.
Okay.
Uh, if it becomes a security, if people can make money off of it, especially in alignment with the mission, it feels bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we want to focus the work on against the goal of supporting these frontline organizations. And so you'll get voting power when basically $1 equals one token as the rule set, and then you'll be able to vote and submit proposals to the community to vote on.
Interesting. And that's really interesting. And so if more people want to join after you've launched the token, how would they get voting power? Or
Yeah, we'll leave the fundraise open for a while. And then I will say, like, after we hit our goal, that mission will be over and then it's up to the community. And I
Hmm.
think the voting structure and voting power rules are kind of up to the community to be changed and
Hmm.
evolved, and they can be improved on. As far as NFTs too, I think it would be amazing to layer in these like beautiful symbols of your engagement and involvement in the community. And one idea that I have that I hope we can do is some sort of like retroactive NFT drop to all our contributors. I think that would be a really cool way for them to have that as a digital asset to say, hey, I was part of this.
Yeah,
And we have some amazing work from community members who have been, are, talented artists and designers that have created assets for something like that.
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, of course, the cool thing about this is that you can start with a very constrained system and then just let the community decide what's the better way to deal with it. Um, in that sense, talking about a little bit about specifics, so you have this goal of 1,027 in 26 days, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Uh, is there a cap on the race? Is it capped?
So the mission, we kind of need an anchor point to end the mission just to communicate with our partners who are waiving all their fees to work with us.
Uh-huh.
And as well internally, community members to anchor around, okay, this is when we'll pause, we'll come up for air, we'll reevaluate, and we'll decide what we want to do next. So for the first mission, the goal is over $1 million in 26 days, as you said, and the mission will concretely end once we double that number.
Okay. And is there a cap on the amount that you can uh
Oh.
contribute?
There's no cap. Technically, since you need to contribute to get governance, you'll have to contribute some amount, but there's zero minimum requirement for that.
No, I mean like a top amount.
Oh, no, there's no cap.
Right. Because there is a real possibility that just one, two, or three guys buy out $2 million of this. Like it's not, it wouldn't be unheard of.
Totally.
And
Um,
and
and,
that
and then,
that
yeah,
sort
go
of
ahead.
that sort of gives like like that sort of leads to a problem in a way. What if three people purchase all the tokens and then no one else can participate, right?
Totally. Yeah. I think that's a good call out. One thing we're gonna do is so we're using Snapshot to do off-chain voting.
Hmm.
And there's like so many different hundreds of different snapshot strategies you can employ to kind of hedge against, what if one person just hijacks the vote and wants to donate their money to an organization that they like.
Right.
So you can employ, even with that default rule set of one token equals $1, you can employ different snapshot strategies to kind of work around that risk, if you call it a risk. The organization. So one thing in our governance framework that we're exploring right now is this kind of council model, and so we'll have like a council of elected by the community experts who work in the space that we're working in,
Hmm.
and they'll be able to identify and vet submissions for nonprofit organizations from the community
Hmm.
to say, okay, these are mission aligned or they're not mission aligned. And then from there, the community can choose from the vetted list of supported organizations and create proposals to fund them.
Right. It's super interesting. I mean, and this is sort of, it's fun that even though you wanted to study economic policy, like this ends up being like a PhD in economic policy in itself because it's so much that. Um, and at the end,
It's
go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, it's definitely full circle. And all of this is being done in really tight collaboration with the community. We've spent hours in Discord voice chat talking about tokenomics and governance and how we want to structure it. So it's not just us saying, here, this is how we're going to do it. Vote yes or no. It's how do
Right.
you think we can do it? And
Yeah.
and the community is where the experts are. We're not the experts.
Right.
These people are part of so many projects. They've weathered the storm of so many different crypto winters and different problems, and so they really have the knowledge to kind of guide us and inform us, so we're really using them for
Yeah.
that.
It's a really interesting space because at the end of the day there aren't any experts, like because there's no like no one has a 10-year experience doing this, like
Right.
and there's a lot of ways to approach the thing, and the moment you do it non-transferable, you introduce all these new things, and it's interesting. It's, I don't see it as a problem but rather as a challenge, which I'm sure the community will evolve that governance mechanism as stuff appears. And And I have been watching like some really, really sophisticated behaviors emerge from these community voting mechanisms, which I find really interesting. So I'm excited for
Yeah.
that.
What have
That's the
you, I'm curious, what have you and Ian seen?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. Basically, right now where we are, we're at an inflection point, and not enough people, even the deepest people in the Web3 space, are thinking beyond token weighted voting to other incentive structures, to richer incentive structures, as we've been discussing. So I truly believe that ChoiceDAO, where we are now talking about all of this, is a huge opportunity in general to show how a governance token framework can move beyond pure token weighted voting and use these snapshot strategies and use these perhaps delegated council type frameworks and show that we can do better, basically.
That's so cool. I'm so excited for this. Now, another question. So if how would people how would you tell people to participate up to the fundraiser start?
Yeah, so the community is participating already. We're hosting regular events to kind of talk about these things. There's a lot of engagement in the conversations. People are showing up far past the end of their workday to kind of talk about this with us. And we have the community members building out a lot of the DAO. Like, what processes do you want? How should we be working on this thing? How do we want to operate? And so there's a lot of active participation, even without enablement of governance yet.
Right.
Um, and then we also have like a path to governance even before we start to launch, because once we're able to accept donations, we want to start deploying money as fast as possible. So the community is working on a path to governance that can be put in before contributions. So this week.
Right. So also like I think it's interesting to note that governance is always happening, right? If when you start in a just in a Telegram with five people, governance is happening in that scale, and the only thing that like governance tools allow is to get more people in the process, right? Because the problem with governance is that once you get a lot of people, you can't represent them properly because you don't have the tools to get them to be heard. But
Mm-hmm.
when you get a Discord channel, now you can talk with 100 people, and when you do token voting, now you can talk to 100,000 people, and then to scale that even further, you need like greater and greater structures of organization. But like we've just like breached through, right? And now we can capture more people in our team. Um, but I find it super cool that even at this stage where you're at, like you've gone past the chat group into the Discord. You have this emergence of a framework where you're gonna elect people, and at this stage, anyone could at this point join the Discord and like participate enough to be elected into a council, right? So it's an open door, and to a degree, it's always gonna be an open door, right? Because this is not about exclusivity but inclusivity. So I'm sure you're gonna design for that. Um,
Yeah, I
Yeah,
want to make clear that, sorry, Sahar, just I definitely want to make clear that that is the case and that is what we are all about.
Yeah. To add on to that, I was going to say, even if you can't or you don't want to contribute financially to get voting power, we welcome you into the community. There are so many ways you can get involved without having the tokens, and we're really excited to see participation across contributors at the financial level, but also just contributors in the community and working with the organizations to help get them what they need.
right. Yeah, I mean, I think this framework is really going to make big waves both on chain and off chain. I'm really excited for this. I think you said you had an appointment in a little bit, so I think we could start uh closing the the interview. But you guys have anything else you want to add? Like anything specific to tell people before we go?
I will just say that today is the United States' Independence Day. It's a federal holiday, 4th of July.
Yay, happy
Um,
birthday.
Beautifully symbolic. It's when we ratified the Declaration of Independence. And I love that we're talking about how we can reclaim more of our independence as Americans together. So thank you for creating space and having us on. Ian and I are super excited to be chatting with you.
Thank you for coming. Both you and Ian have been great guests. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure a lot of people will find it super interesting. Let's hope we have more after the launch. Let's set a new date to talk about it after you've gone through this. See what happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. As Sahar said, this day is beautifully symbolic in that way. This movement is, as we've said, just getting started. And, at the end here, I just want to make clear everyone who aligns with our cause and feels passionate about this is welcome because we're all self starters and we're all helping each other to see this through.
Yeah,
Awesome.
join our Discord.
Yeah, everyone join the Discord. Give me the link so I can share them on the video. They'll be on the description and stuff. Also, join the Nerd Quarters to have more of these conversations. Sahara is already there. Ian, I hope to see you in the Nerd Quarters soon.
I'll be
Uh,
there.
awesome. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming for the Nerd Labs, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.